Yeah. No. So I kind of wanted to get a little bit more as far as how do you see the physical? I guess is what she's looking at, or the topic is about interaction between the rough housing and the beating up, and do you think that ever goes too far? What I mean, is there too far in the as far as you walk up and you punch your son in the chest like bow, and he folds over and wants to cry, and you're like, man, get up, don't be a bitch,
Right.
or is there or is that called for? Does he need to get punched in the chest sometimes? Like, yo, man, get up, that doesn't hurt.
I mean, I can't see how that is a productive way of raising a male child. I have focus mitts at home, and I take the focus mitts out so I can teach my son how to punch. But at the same time in that instruction, I tell him when it is correct to punch people back. You know what I mean? Because the way that I'm accustomed is that you really shouldn't fight unless it's self-defense. You know, but as far as just your son rolling up and you just decide you want to punch him in the chest, and you haven't taught him any previous self-defense, I mean, I think that's unfair. Okay. But if you've been training your son, you would expect him to offset that punch. And then if he got hit, more than likely your son would laugh like, "Oh man," because you've already trained him how to defend himself.
Right. Right.
I think it depends on the child, because a lot of these young children. I can think of my cousin specifically. He got to an age where he started getting a little bit bigger, good about himself, puffing his chest up, trying to debo you a little
get
bit.
A little
you gotta,
debo you.
Yeah. So you gotta, get a little strong with him to show him like, okay, yeah, you're getting there, you're almost there, but you're not quite there.
Not quite there yet.
And I'm not just gonna let you think that, okay, I'm at that level. I want you to know if you are, if you're not at that level. Right. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I think it really depends on the child. If you have a child who's more timid, and that's just who they are, there's probably more, there's a better approach to taking. But like I said, it all depends on the child, I
think. Yeah. Right. I would say, and I like your example, Drew, of the animal kingdom and the lion playing with its cubs and whatnot, and saying kind of roughhousing, or even them roughhousing amongst each other, kind of sharpening their skills amongst each other, kind of the same way that we come amongst each other, maybe quote degrees with each other, make sure that everyone, and it's not on some like, aha, I got you, I'm gonna beat you down. It's more like, all right, I got you, now you need to straighten this up. So I would say in that aspect, it's a good thing to have, right? Because you definitely need to know how to rough around and throw punches and get punched, and
that's how you hone your skills,
and be able to take it. What are you gonna do when someone punches you in the chest? You gonna just look at them and cry and break down, or are you gonna defend yourself?
Right. Think about it. If there was a child who never had that, then they go out into the world, they have a family, and then someone comes up to them and basically says, "I'm gonna take your woman and your child." They've never had that experience. Quite naturally, some people have a certain nature about them that could protect their family, but a lot of times that fear kicks in, and they don't know how to deal with the fear, and it's flight.
Perfect example. In what was it, New York, when they had the motorcycle thing, and that dude got pulled out of his car. I understand that you may not necessarily have numbers on your side, but at a certain point, right, you need to think, okay, what's going to happen to my wife and child? So maybe I should get out of the car and do something instead of being defenseless in my car. Please stop, please stop.
Run them Jews over, like
right. That dude had no kind of self-defense preservation.
Yeah.
Over, he just kind of curled up. He was in a vehicle. Yeah, you could run people over in vehicles. I mean, he's never played GTA. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to bring that up as a topic we had. See what you guys thought about it.
Hey, I really thank you for. Of course, we can't say the person's name, but thank you for raising that, and anything you want to have discussed that was started on our forum. By all means, do that. We encourage everyone to do that.
Let's continue the conversation. Add on there. You have another point.
Yeah.
So our first segment is how cartoons teach original people to hate themselves. I think we all have an experience or have had several experiences where we've watched cartoons. Some of us can remember sitting in front of the television after school, eating a bowl of Fruit Loops, catching our favorite cartoon right after school, doing that instead of doing our homework. But in any case, we just wanted to talk quite extensively about the different ways that cartoons have not only harmed, but in some ways dismantled a healthy image that original people should have of themselves. And of course, cartoon is just another form of media, and we're going to build extensively about that. One of the first things that we talked about as a collective was the idea of the Sambo in popular children's cartoons. So if you haven't heard of the word or terminology Sambo, and you're on the internet, we would encourage you to just kind of put in a search, put Sambo, maybe click images, and you're going to see a wide variety of pictures of the Sambo. So in some circles, it's a dark representation of black people with large lips. Usually they're red, or in some cases, if Sambo's being acted out, they have white around their eyes and large lips and white gloves. And they're eating a big piece of watermelon. So this image was created by what we would still refer to as a racist society, America. So why don't we get into the early Looney cartoons, or the early Looney Tune cartoons, and talk a little bit about how those were used early on to discriminate against original people. So why don't we just throw it into the cipher? I'm sure who was gonna start this leg.
Doing a little research. I mean, I was a big cartoon head when I was little. I was really into Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. I can remember being probably about 4 or 5 years old, and there were certain things in those cartoons that kind of like made me think. For example, in Tom and Jerry, there was the maid type of woman who would come over, and then when Jerry ran out of his little mouse hole, she would jump up on the chair and ooh, make all those types of and it made me think like, wait a minute, something about this doesn't seem right. You know what I mean?
Also, cut you like that, but also, that view of that woman, for a lot of people, that's like your grandmother.
It was a big mama, big mama type of thing. So, yeah, you're right. So, that's one instance. Also, within your Looney Tunes, anytime they would travel to any type of island, you had the natives of that island throwing spears and really savage and trying to chase them down and trying to eat them and
the hot cauldron there.
Yeah, trying to boil them up.
Cannibalism.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, as a young child, I saw that as wrong, or something wasn't right about it. But I didn't necessarily have, that foundation or that father, or even, my mom. She wasn't necessarily sitting beside me saying, okay, well, this is what they're trying to do as far as the imagery goes. I was able to detect it, but I think there's a lot of children that might not. And they start to develop a mind state of thinking that that's how their people are, or that's what they don't want to be like, so they kind of want to remove themselves from anything associated with being, black or original or anything to that respect. So,
and that's a powerful statement, because I hear that now working with teenagers. A select few will say, "Well, I'm not black," because that entails a whole bunch of other images about that existence. So, black, as always, and we will continue to share this with you as often as we can, that black is always associated with something negative, even though in money, in the financial world, if you're in the black, you're doing really good. So that's probably
black
the only
card.
Right. Your Black Friday, when everyone goes to the stores and spends all their money. So, right. So I know I picked up on one. If you look at it's an old Popeye cartoon, because this again it ties into this whole idea of sample, right? Because if you look all across the boards, even if it's like a depiction of someone who's Jewish, Japanese, Chinese, or Asian, um, people of Mexican descent, um, they always give these gross exaggerations of our facial features. The large lips, the large eyes,
Yeah.
you know, the buck teeth. That's something that's very consistent across these stereotypes in cartoons. And one of the things that we picked up on, we were tripping off of it too. It's called, it's titled "You're a Sap, Mr. Jap," and that's an old 1943 Popeye cartoon. And I mean, within what, maybe 1 minute, if not even that, of watching that cartoon, there's a depiction of a Japanese man, and he has these extremely buck teeth like a rabbit, and he has these small specks on, you know, the typical specs that, you know, I guess you would see on Japanese people depicted in American movies back in the day, and just the whole type. The whole stereotype involving language, you know, if he spoke with the little funny accent that they associate with that. So again, that would be some of the early beginnings of the image of the Sambo, at least as it depicted Japanese people. So
yeah, definitely. I wanted to mention they call it the censored 11. And there's like 11 shows or cartoons that were, you know, taken off of the air in 1968. So if you YouTube censored 11, you could actually watch these cartoons, and you know it's pretty graphic in the nature of what they show or what they depict. So
right, and not only that, those are just what they censored, right? So all the other cartoons, even a little bit farther in the Looney Tune history, we've got Tasmania, the Tasmanian Devil. And
the Tasmanian Devil. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. And so, I, you know, when I was watching that, I always kind of had this weird kind of love for Taz.
Yeah.
Never quite knew why, right? But just Taz was kind of cool. Growing up, I got a little older, did a little research. I realized the Tasmanians were wiped out by Caucasian people, and there are no Tasmanians. And so when you watch the cartoon, there was a couple episodes where these two brown-skinned people were trying to capture Taz to bring him someplace else to sell him. So you know you got depictions like that. Obviously, Taz is as a black man, and how they're using other black men to get into the jungles because Caucasians didn't have a free pass to kind of travel like that. So they tell you all these things in cartoons, right? But you don't necessarily, as a child, you know, it's a fine mist, the naked eye can hardly detect.
Right, and then you think, as soon as you say anyone mentions Tasmania, you think of the Tasmanian cartoon as opposed to actual people being wiped out. Yeah,
right. And then just how they show you how they think of those people. Tasmania spun, you know, the Tasmanian Devil spun around. Like he had no sense and he was just destructive and destroyed everything. Yeah, couldn't really speak
noises,
proper, right? And so you know when you see that kind of depiction, you obviously wouldn't want to associate yourself with being a thing like that.
That's a heavy build. And just think if we're talking about, because you have to talk about some cartoons symbolically and what those characters represent. So you know we're seeing the Tasmanian Devil as actually a substitute for depicting an original person. So more about my views about Scooby-Doo. But I want to know a little bit about the original Elmer Fudd.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny because I remember growing up seeing Elmer Fudd and just the way that he carried himself. It was like, it seemed like, okay, well, something's wrong with this picture, right? So, you know, coming across, Jaquil's actually the one who brought it up to me about the original Elmer Fudd being an original man. And, you know, I actually, you know, Googled it, did some research, and there's an actual cartoon if you want to look at it. It's called All This in Rabbit Stew. And it's, you know, Elmer Fudd, but, you know, a black skin, you know, big pink-lipped Elmer Fudd, and, you know, just acting real just watch. Just watch. I'll just say.
Right.
But it just, to me, it's like Bugs represented the Caucasian man because he was real slick. He would try to get over on you, make you look, or make you act other than your own self, and those types of things. And Elmer Fudd always seemed to be on the other end of that spectrum.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Even when you watch the interaction between Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, right? Daffy would
Black
always,
duck,
yeah,
right? Pink lips.
And I want to say they use. Everyone knows the story of the white swan and then the black ugly duck.
Ugly duckling, right?
They use Daffy Duck to be that duck, right? So they're obviously telling you who Daffy is,
right?
And every time he has an interaction with Bugs Bunny, he's always on the losing end of that, right? So obviously, as someone who is black, right, you're not going to want to lean towards a Daffy Duck. You're going to want to be more Bugs Bunny-ish, i.e., in your mind, you're going to be more. You want to be more Caucasian, then you're going to want to be your original self.
Even I can remember in certain Looney Tunes cartoons, anytime a character would get blown up, their face after they were blown up would be that of original features.
Right.
Right.
So it's like subliminally we're saying that, okay, negative relates to being of black or having black features. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's a great analogy right there. I wanted to see what was the discussion about jungle jitters in terms of original people in the jungle. Because I didn't get to see that one, but you can break.
That was
it
a
down,
cartoon, huh?
Yeah, Jungle Jitters was a deep one. It's basically this salesman goes into the jungle and he's trying to sell. I can't remember what precisely he's trying to sell, but he comes across a civilization of original people, and automatically they start seeing him as food, and they want to cook him and eat him. But you have
Caucasians are on record as being first people who are cannibals.
Cannibals, right? Still eating people till within like the 1700s, still eating people, but that's for another day.
I mean, they made a movie about it, Alive, right?
Well, that's even more recent. So but what was crazy was they just had them dancing around the jungle, like I said, throwing spears and acting really, really savage. But the thing that struck me the most was when you see the queen of the civilization, it's actually a Caucasian woman. She's kind of had like a British or an English type of accent.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of reminds us of the English crown.
Right.
How prevalent their power was in what we call Africa today. There's also some interesting depictions if you look at Speedy Gonzales. So those of you who consider yourself of Mexican descent, or you are of Mexican descent, it's a better way to put it. I'm taking it easy on y'all today. So there's a cartoon titled Cats and Bruises starring Speedy Gonzales, and I mean there are so many gross depictions of Mexicans. Not only just looking at the facial features, but just how they're depicted as being lazy people. Not laid back, but just lazy people who are really only interested in jumping and skipping around and dancing with each other, and they can be easily fooled. So that's another sense of many of the cartoons that depict our people. It always shows us as being less than intelligent, as always being tricked by the character that personifies the Caucasian. And like you mentioned, Bugs Bunny had this incredible capacity to dress up in different ways and put on all these different masks to outsmart his victims.
And sometimes dressing up like a woman.
Right.
True indeed, and kissing males as well. So, it's kind of interesting to see these types of things. Anyone else have any other archival cartoons, man? Because I know a lot of you are not sitting there watching cartoons made in the 50s or 60s. Maybe you should. But anyone have anything else for that one?
I was just thinking of the Speedy Gonzales thing and just some of those depictions. And a lot of times
Underlay. Iba,
Right. But so I remember watching, and I'm trying to think of a bunch of different episodes, but I remember a lot of them was regarding him crossing some kind of line to go from one place to another place. And a lot of times he was going to get cheese, right, and then bringing it back, right, or get the milk, or he was getting one of his people who got caught over on the other side, right, and then trying to bring them back over. And so where's this line and this back and forth that this brown Mexican, so-called Mexican mouse, I guess you call it, right, is crossing back and forth.
That's deep.
Yeah,
and that's another thing. As far as, because we could say it with Bugs Bunny as well, but we know that mice and rats, they have a tendency to produce, more offspring than some of your other animals. So, and more than that, a mouse is one of the most unwanted creatures in anyone's house. Not unless you like mice crawling around your house, but for the most part, they're very undesirable to have around. So, all of this may sound abstract and symbolic, but if you look at it from the lens of the Knowledge of Self radio show, this is how we see things. I'm sure some of you remember the PJs by Eddie Murphy, so now we're bringing you into a more modern look of cartoons. And, if you look at the PJs just from jump, the animation, the graphics are incredible. I mean, it's very appealing to the eye, but then you're taken into this journey where you're in this major housing projects. It depicts on the outside these huge buildings, however many stories are in them. And there's a character by the name of Supa who's played by Eddie Murphy. So Eddie Murphy was actually the one that financed the show. And I can remember when the PJs first came out, students were coming in like, oh man, did you see the PJs last night? And, it was just, oh, this is what happened. So here we go again with the image of the Sambo. The Sambo returns in modern cartoons or anime or in entertainment. I would consider the PJs, at least when it first came out on that particular channel, I believe it was released on Fox first.
Yeah, I think so.
That was considered prime time.
Yeah.
So here you are, you're looking at a cartoon depicting original people in the projects. Housing projects. Do we live in the projects? Yes. Some of us live in the housing projects. But for that, among any other cartoon that may have been proposed that year to come out on prime time, why did it have to be a cartoon that's showing us about the entertaining aspect of living in the housing projects?
Right. Scrambling every day to, make rent and make food or fix certain situations. And it's just depressive. It can be depressive. I mean, they make it, comedic, but at the same time, just that day-to-day process, is a depressive process.
Right, for sure. I think, we know that colors, because you mentioned the visual aspect of it, right? So we know that colors have a certain effect on people, right? They can stimulate you to buy things. They can stimulate you to feel a certain way. Pardon me. So when you look at those kind of colors, you got to think of what kind of mood is that setting you into.
Definitely.
Right, and then you look at the comedy aspect. We know that comedy a lot of times can be used to make light of things that are really heavy and kind of make it more normal. And if you're laughing at it, right, then it's just kind of easier to accept. And then definitely if you're not going through it, you can really laugh at those people. Now you're not laughing at the situation, you're laughing at the people because you're like, oh yeah, I saw it on TV, that's funny. Haha, you can't pay your light bills and you have to do homework by the moonlight or use your neighbor's extension cord to get a lamp into your house. Haha, that's so funny. I was sitting up in my room, with my big screen TV, chilling, and so I think
it has like more of a 360 effect.
Yeah.
It's not just on the original people per se, but it's about certain people even becoming even more disconnected to original people because you're looking at them like, wow, look at those peons. You know what I mean?
Right.
Man, good points.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear the discussion about The Simpsons and Family Guy and SpongeBob and South Park. So I know when we were talking, you two were pretty much going in on that. So I'll let Jaquil lead the discussion on that.
Oh man,
someone's watching SpongeBob today. What's up?
SpongeBob. There's a lot about SpongeBob. Family Guy, in particular, episode I'm thinking about where Peter, obviously a Caucasian character, claims back in his lineage he was black. And when he depicts himself as being black in his lineage, there was like some slave things going on. And so it's like, first of all, how did you go from being black to now being white? First of all, right? Is that some kind of better thing for you now because you live in this neighborhood and you have a family? Whereas when you looked at Cleveland when he was on the show, right, the only black character on the show, because you know how they do. But right, Cleveland didn't have his household together, right? And so you have a depiction of a white dude housed together who, when he was black, went back into slavery, not a good situation. Present time, you got the black dude who his wife left him in the damn cartoon show, right? And he ended up being single and whatever, broke off, have his own show. But in any event, you see that weird depiction of black and white, and how white where he is now as being a white man is a better place than as he was when he was black.
Wow.
Yeah, it's deep. It's kind of for me when I look at the Simpsons. Simpsons been on as long as damn near I've been on the planet in a physical form. But I can remember, as a youngster, just watching the Simpsons. And you don't really, if you think about Springfield, you don't really have that many original people there.
Right.
You got Abu.
Right, I was going to say this.
And other than Abu, you have cameos of different original people who may come on. You have the Caucasian bald dude who was Michael Jackson, or claiming to be Michael Jackson, right?
Right. Bleeding Gums,
who passed away, right? From a heart attack, if I'm not mistaken. But other than them, you don't really see a whole lot of original people. And I think the biggest thing for me is that if you're going to have cartoons that depict original people negatively, there should be a balance. You should have some positive or more positive, and maybe if you're going to go the negative route, have a minimal amount. But it shouldn't just be the only time you see original people is that in that negative light.
Right.
Because not only do original people start thinking that they're supposed to be that way, or that's funny to be that way, but other people, like we spoke about earlier, tend to think that that's how original people are supposed to be. And it's clear when you come across a Caucasian dude who thinks that he has to talk to you a certain way. What's up, man?
Right.
Nah, that's not how you talk when you go home. So just talk to me normal, like
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's just one of those things, man.
Exactly. You brought up a good point as far as that might be a situation into where now you feel you have to act a certain way, and we know that comedy is a good way to kind of be accepted by people, right? So as a black male, going into a society where you're not equally accepted with everyone else, you then maybe make some comic jokes, right? And kind of degrade yourself and who you are as a person, just so you can kind of feel like you're equal with these or accepted by these people to get in and fit in. So you play those stereotypes of what they think a typical black man is.
Yeah, it's about being non-threatening. If you can present yourself in a non-threatening way, then you'll be more accepted. But if you are a distinguished, strong individual, he's scary. He's scary. Really?
And we haven't seen really what I would consider a cartoon featuring a black family that, aside from the one that Bill Cosby has on right now, that is actually prime time viewing, you know what I mean, for white America to view.
Right.
Those shows tend not to get, they tend not to get the pub, Yeah. What's up with the Cleveland show?
Nah, but that's kind of like a broken down situation too. So again, that's a spinoff from Family Guy, and then he goes off and he has his own thing now in a new town, and But even his family, right? So he brought his kid with him, who is really intelligent, but he's overweight, and they kind of beat up on him because he's not as physically uh, fit as he is intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have that whole scenario. But even within his household, he plays second rate to the woman, so she kind of bosses him around and degrades him as a man. So even within his own TV show, he's the star of the show, but he's still made fun of.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it's even then they show you like the black man is still, although you're in a dominant position, you're in that position so that people can kind of
Laugh at you and you become the butt. You're the butt of the joke.
What's the thing in Jason? They're all gonna laugh at you, laugh at you. Yeah, but you know those kind of things can't draw a brother to be a little crazy and psychotic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Now we have SpongeBob and South Park, so why don't we sew up this segment with that discussion? I'm here to learn from y'all. What's up with SpongeBob?
Oh man, you look like you had something to.
Oh, I know you had a video that showed something about SpongeBob. I don't really watch that. You know, I've never really been exposed to it like that. I know y'all are a little older and your children.
Yeah.
Do
Have you watched
those
any
cartoons?
SpongeBob episodes?
Yes, I have, but I just lose interest, man. I mean, once I look for the racy scenes, you know, and I don't really see them, then I pretty much let them watch it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know if SpongeBob has as much racism in it as much as it may have the whole sexual twist thing, right? So you have SpongeBob, which I ask my kids all the time, is SpongeBob a boy or a girl? And I think my daughter would tell you that he's a boy, but she'd be like, but he does weird things, Dad, so. And my son is like, yeah, I don't know. You know, that's just SpongeBob. So, you know, you kind of got this thing, right, that can either be male or female. So that's kind of, you know, we're within its own self. It's where you don't have a clear role being depicted as to what it is. Because there's episodes where Patrick and SpongeBob will, they had a baby Pearl or something, and Patrick was the father, SpongeBob was the mother who stayed at home and did everything. Patrick goes out to work, which was i.e. his house. So he walked out of SpongeBob's pineapple, goes to his little rock, and he sits down and he's watching TV, and he comes back home and he's like, "Where's my food?" and da 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 da, and then SpongeBob breaks down, acting like some emotional woman.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was real ill watching this transpire, you know what I mean? And then the whole thing to, you know, again, I go back to my daughter, I'm like, so is SpongeBob a boy or a girl? And she's like, well, he's a boy.
Wow.
Right? But so you have this boy taking the role of a female.
Right.
And then giving these classic trained female responses of, why are you not spending any time? Just help me, da 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 da. And Patrick was like, the man, and he's like, well, I have to go to work, and I'm tired from my hard day at work. Why don't you just take care of me? Yeah, so I think SpongeBob, if anything, has more issues like
that gender line.
Yeah, than it does.
Wow.
Man. Just out and out racism.
I don't know if you saw that one. I gotta check that out, man. Thank you guys. So South Park, I know there's at least one character in there. His name is Token. So, you know, and Token's family. If you all are familiar with what a token is, a token black is just that one black individual at your workplace who they feel would be the representation of the missing African Americans. Like, this is the one that can represent everyone in our company. So we don't need any others. Here he is right here.
Right.
So how did you all break down South Park? It's been a while since it's been on, man.
South Park is one of those shows, God. Yeah, I mean, you know, they definitely got the racism in it where they impersonate Japanese people saying "hello, please," and there was an episode where they thought they had these Japanese dudes, and you know, they had the typical stereotypical voice of a Japanese person in America as depicted by Americans. and they were trying to kill all the dolphins and sharks or something like that, or kill all the dolphins. I forgot the episode. It's South Park. It's weird. But even they have them being all crazy and kind of jumping around, being all stereotypical. So I'd say South Park definitely goes hard as far as
McKinney, right? The Ethiopian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kenny's
Didn't they have a dude on there named Kenny?
Yeah, there's a dude who's part of the cast, Kenny. He's always dying.
Yeah, isn't he Ethiopian?
Oh,
I want to say he's like an Ethiopian starving kid, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
He's just one of the Caucasian kids.
Wait, no, is it Kenny? Remember the black
on South Park?
Yeah, I think it was early because
South Park like that.
I never really watched it either, but I remember in the beginning they had like a black character who was like Ethiopian or something, and he was like starving, and it seemed like they were depicting Ethiopians as the only starving individuals. Yeah.
South Park, I would say, definitely pushes the line. And goes way beyond the line in many cases as far as racism and just the whole even sexuality thing. I know there's an episode.
There's a bunch of that in there.
Yeah, the guy goes undercover. I'm not going to get too far in the episode because it was I've been exposed to many things on the internet, and so for me to look at something and be like, yo, that was a little gross. It was a little foul. But in any event, the cop ends up going undercover as a prostitute. And so they're catching people in sex raids, and he has a code word. So he's supposed to give the code word before anything happens. But so the dude goes through with whatever act he's doing and then gives the code word. Yeah, so I mean, it's just... It's definitely an ill show.
So
blurs that line.
Again, I think the value of this show is always just look into these things and do your own research. And actually, when you come up with some stuff that we may have overlooked, something that was hidden, because a lot of the things, if we really sat there and watched it a couple of times, we would see a lot more in terms of some of the popular cartoons that sometimes we let our children watch. Because I know there are a bunch of children over the years who've quoted Family Guy and acted all these things out. Why? Because it's on regular television. So why don't we take a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to you about Caucasian heroes in cartoons. Peace.
Caucasian. Talk about them too.
I think Woody Woodpecker. Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self radio show. My name is Ture. Allah.
Peace. There's Jakil Nasha Allah.
Jeru Allah.
And when we were discussing before break, we were discussing the stereotypes that exist in cartoons, past and modern. And I think we really have to go into some of those cartoons that, again, we spent a lot of time watching growing up, and we may have purchased the toys or had the toys purchased for us. Because at some point in our childhood, the Caucasian man was our hero. So we're going to talk a little bit about Caucasians in cartoons.
I didn't mean to laugh like that, but I mean, it's true, though.
It's true, God. I mean, if we think about some of the toys we bought, man, they were all Caucasian males. I had a He-Man. We had G.I. Joes. We had Batman. If you
Lion-O from Thundercats.
We know we had Lion-O. I mean, we may be showing our age, God, but in all respects, I mean, those tend to be our heroes. Nas wrote a song called "These Are Our Heroes." Check that song out and kind of make an analogy between what we're about to tell you. But we did want to talk about He-Man and Batman, Thor, and Superman. So why don't we just run it on down the line? Who would like to start a discussion about He-Man? Because I know I still check out He-Man with my son to get him off of some of these nasty, racy cartoons they got coming out now, man.
I've even started watching, I guess they redid He-Man.
Oh, is that
They
right?
redid He-Man?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. Everyone's got Netflix. Yeah.
Even Conan.
Oh,
I
word?
never saw the Conan
Okay.
cartoon.
Oh, that's right.
Wasn't Conan a Sumerian too?
Yeah, he was a Sumerian. Should have been a little darker than he was.
Right.
Maybe he was a Sumerian who stayed under the trees a lot.
Oh, okay. I think for me, when you just look at it, it's anytime you see the character that a young boy would want to aspire to be, he's of Caucasian descent, right? You got your blonde hair, blue eyed He-Man. You got Batman, who obviously a Caucasian man. Thor, blonde hair, blue eyes. Superman, black hair, blue eyes. So it's just, to me, when we look at, I guess, the cartoons in their totality, and then where you could see original people depicted, you don't usually ever see them in a light that's of prominence.
Right.
Like as a young child, you don't want to aspire to be, Elmer Fudd. You know what I mean? So,
and I'm even thinking, because He-Man had some people who rode with him. I'm trying to think of some of the names, like Man at Arms and I'm kind of failing on my. Sorry, you He-Man fans out there.
No, it's alright. Like Orko.
There you go. Oh, you know what though? There you
wizard.
go. Orko, right, and I think he was supposed to be the black one.
Right. His face was in the shadow and had
but
a little hat.
If you remember, he was one who always kept messing up his magic tricks.
Right.
And every once in a while, he'd come through with some magic that worked, and he'd be like, "Oh wow, that worked! I'm so surprised." But he wasn't one of those. He wasn't one of the people that you were like, "Yo, I want to be like Arco when I get older."
Right. So I think it's a good point that you made, is that when black characters aren't depicted in cartoons, you always have this buffoon in the cartoon, and those of us, if you pick up on it, you ask yourself, I wonder where the black character is. Well, that's the black character, because remember, historically speaking, when we talked to you early in the program about the stereotypical depiction of original people, remember, they were all depicted as buffoons when people were depicting us in those cartoons. But now, you got to think about white Hollywood and the media. Okay, people think, just like we're thinking about these cartoons, they think, well, how can we put a black character in a cartoon without actually making them black? But we can give them all of the sort of the exoskeleton of what of how we see black people, or how they're stereotyped. I think, and it's just kind of a side note, all the controversy that came out about Jar Jar Binks in one of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
That was a really blatant and show of our people in Star Wars. Right. And I know a lot of people picked up on it, and they kind of came out like, hey, that Jar Jar Binks character, I don't really like how he comes off, you know what I mean? He wasn't visibly black, but all of the stereotypical mannerisms that are associated with our people, specifically males, came out in his character.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no doubt. No, and kind of, I know it's a little from cartoons to movies, but I was actually just watching Avatar again for the second time, which is really Dances with Wolves, or which is really The Last Samurai. The Last Samurai is Dances with Wolves, because they all tell the same story differently. But in Avatar, I think the uniqueness about it is they show you that they can depict original people as aliens.
You're right.
As
aliens.
So think about that too when you're watching movies and you see all these Caucasians falling in love with aliens and having babies with aliens. Is that they're really talking about original people?
Great analogy. What's up with Batman? How does everyone see Batman? I have yet to see Batman be black.
I think for me, I've always looked at Batman as black just because he was a darker type of character. You know, when he got in his gear, it was darker gear.
The Dark Knight.
Yeah, the Dark Knight. And just, you know, his demeanor was more, just kind of connected with me more.
Okay.
You know, but, you know, be visibly still Caucasian.
I mean, I want to say, and I know all you comic hero fans out there and stuff can correct me, but I want to say Batman might have been the only dude to lose his family. Right? So when you kind of...
Superman did lose.
Oh, yeah, that's right, too.
His planet was blown up.
His planet was blown up.
But he is not as blonde hair and blue eyed as He-Man.
True.
And whatchamacallit. So it's interesting how they, you know, maybe those characters might have wanted to come out black. But they were like, nah, we can't make a black super character like that because...
well, Superman's name was Kal-El, right? Crown God. They're telling you, but they ain't telling you, so.
Right. Unbelievable.
That's deep. But yeah, no, Batman, yeah, I guess I could see Batman being more original.
And that's what, honestly, that's what I started to do as a child. I would just see certain characters as black.
Okay.
You know what I mean? As opposed to just saying, like, okay, well, I don't know, you know, that's a great thing about being a child. You have your own imagination.
Yeah.
And that's something that I did to kind of have more of a connection with who
right.
I was as it relates to, you know, these different characters. You know what I mean? But I don't know if every child has that ability. You know what I mean? I'm sure they do, but I don't know if it happens.
If it happens out to them like that. Yeah, I know my daughter, I know a lot of you, I don't know if everyone thinks like this, but when you go out to buy dolls for your children, you know, there's not a lot of original dolls being made.
Right.
And of the ones that there are, they're kind of slutty dressed and, you know, whatnot. So anyway, I'll take, like, a Barbie doll that may have, like, brown hair and brown eyes and be like, well, nah, that's a brown seed.
Right.
It's not a white Barbie, so that's kind of how you were saying, you know, you put that image out there of them so you can see that, look, you're still being, although they're not representing you fully, here you can see things and connect to you.
I think the only time we really got cut a break, and I'm putting that in quotation marks, was when, you know, the televised episodes of Batman depicted Eartha Kitt as Catwoman. And for those of you who watched the spandex era of Batman on television, I mean, I
couldn't watch that.
It was an interesting lesson. You know, I would watch it to watch all the fighting and stuff, and it was kind of cool. And it was an interesting twist to see a black woman on that. But if you look at Superman and his female counterpart, Superwoman, you know, she was Caucasian.
Wonder Woman, Caucasian.
Who was Batwoman? Batwoman was also Caucasian.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just interesting how our movies, when, you know, starring our people in these superhero roles, they tend to flop. Not unless they're a comedy.
Although
Blank Man.
Huh?
Blank Man, yeah, Blank Man.
And I was
Meteor
gonna
Man.
Meteor Man. Meteor Man. Yo, I remember seeing that in the video store on VHS, and was like, nah, I can't even bring. As a child, I couldn't bring myself to rent that movie. I was like, nah, that's just terrible.
Even you remember the movie with Will Smith where he's a superhero?
I didn't see
he's
that.
a lazy
or maybe
dude.
I fell asleep.
Yeah,
he's a drunk.
Sorry,
he's
Will.
a drunk, lazy dude, and
didn't really care until the end. I fell asleep in that movie. I paid for it though.
Right.
There is a cartoon that's made by Marvel, and it's Black Panther.
Yeah.
And it's real short. You can catch it on Netflix. Yeah. And what's dope about that is they show a part in Africa as being like the most high tech, advanced. They don't need any help from anyone. And then you have Black Panther, who I'm just giving it to you raw, kicks the shit out of everyone else as far as Marvel characters, and none of these dudes can fade him. But again, you know, his series was like 8 episodes long or something. And each episode was like 15 minutes or something that's very short. Dude's got no movies. I never heard of Black Panther before.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was a cartoon. I mean, not a cartoon, but a comic, you know, back in the day. Okay. I don't know if they still making new comics, but...
Yeah, they had...
there's one black superhero.
Right.
Marshall Bravestar? Y'all remember that show?
No.
Y'all never seen the Marshall
Bravestar? No.
Look that up.
He was like, you know, so-called Native American, but he was, you know, like a cowboy, but I think he was kind of like partially like robot.
Huh.
Yeah, but he was like a futuristic type of cowboy, bounty hunter type of dude. It's pretty tight.
Interesting. You know. So there are some things
sprinkle in there.
A sprinkle. You wonder what the staff looked like when those type of cartoons came out. Right. Like who got fired and who was there.
Right.
So I know we had established that when we were building the show that the enemies in cartoons tend to be dark. So I mean, we can continue to address this in terms of films. And cartoons. So in this case, we're gonna talk about cartoons. So what were some of the cartoons, even presently or even in the past, that have depicted original people as being the bad guys? Anyone remember some of those?
I'd have to say Skeletor would have to be, you know, looking at He-Man, he'd have to be, of course, a black man. Trying to think of some other cartoons that had some...
Well, I know Batman had... it was Gray Skull or something like that, or Red Skull, or
Red Skull.
Red Skull. I know there's a lot more. I just slips my mind right now.
Yeah. As far as cartoons, I'm thinking movies. Catwoman. We were talking about Batman. Catwoman was black. Halle Berry. But you know, they kind of spun that to where you might be able to look at her as being
a hero
in some weird way. Much like the way you would look at Devil's Rejects and think that those guys were good at the end. For any of y'all who ever seen Devil's Rejects.
Yeah, that whole idea of the anti-hero, you know, kind of like Riddick. You know, he's, you know, he would be classified as an anti-hero. But why can't an original man just be considered a hero?
The hero.
You know, outside of you know, Men in Black, you know, partnering up with a Caucasian.
But even him, he's kind of the buffoon out of the two.
Right, he is.
Right.
He is. Which goes back how we were talking about earlier, where they put that person, you know, the Cleveland show. He's got his own show. He's the star, yet he's still the butt of the jokes and gets mistreated by everyone.
True indeed. Now, I know we wanted to get into the subliminal messages, so before we get into that, let's go into a little bit about what a subliminal message is. I wanted to just kind of spin that around the round table. So, how do you all see and define what a subliminal message is in cartoons and/or movies?
I think it's just something that you're not consciously aware of, you know, or it's not meant for you to consciously be aware of. So it's not necessarily a main plot in the actual movie or cartoon, but it's something that's there, and it's supposed to be more picked up by your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
So if we know anything about television and movies, you got to look at the science of what happens as far as the way it's projected from the screen in the low alpha waves and what kind of state that puts your mind in.
Right.
And it's basically just putting you in a hypnotic state. And then it just makes you more suggestible. So whatever imagery that you see and whatever subliminal messages are on the screen, you're going to take into your subconscious mind. You know?
That's true.
Right. I like how you build up. It makes you more subjectable. And I remember we did a show building about that science.
A television show.
And in that mind state, you're not actively thinking. You're just taking in thoughts and basically being programmed. So yeah, I think subliminal, definitely like you said, just things that maybe you didn't notice. Where in the background of a movie, they have something on the wall, and you're not necessarily watching it because you're watching the guy creep through the house or slow, right? But subconsciously, you see that thing on the back of the wall, and that sticks in your mind, and you may act that out, or I'm saying that have a certain kind of effect on you.
And I think, it's important to mention that because a lot of times all the stuff we're building on, people are looking at it. Well, it's just cartoons, it's just this, it's just comedy, But you got to realize that there's a scientific element that goes into it. So when you get those frequencies coming from the tube or the screen at the movie theater, it's going to put you in a certain state. Now, if you're not, I think if you have a great level of conscious ability, you can detect what certain images or certain things are being kind of projected at you. But if you don't have that ability, then you're just open to all this information getting put on your subconscious mind.
Right.
And that's why with original children and original people in general, we tend to have a lack of self-respect for ourselves.
Right.
Because when you look across the board at who dies the most in movies, in television, it's original, by and large, it's original men or original people. So,
and we also die the earliest.
Yeah. So I think that ties into why when you see on television in the news, 50,000 people die of AIDS in Africa. People look at it like, But if you ever heard of any 50,000 white people dying anywhere,
right, it'd be a huge thing.
Exactly,
it would be. And since it's being packaged up in television, many of the things you're saying, people become desensitized to that type of violence. Where it's just like, 50,000 people. All right, what's on the next channel?
Exactly.
True indeed.
Yeah.
Very good point. So I wanted to see what were some of the subliminal messages in popular television programs, whether they be past or present, that some of you all sort of did some research on. I know we have 21 Jump Street, which coming up, I think that was one of my favorite television shows. It used to trip me out because they had the black captain, and they had it was a Holly Peterson in that one as well. So I think that was one of the two things that kind of made me look at it. But what was some of the pitfalls of that show that came out of everyone's research?
I think he's building on the movie.
Yeah.
The movie itself.
Oh, the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm dated. I was looking at the
because
television
I was
show.
thinking the same thing. Like, I grew up watching 21 Jump Street. What a great everyone jump. 21 Jump Street.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That was the groove, right?
Right.
And then so I went to watch the movie, and I was kind of expecting for it to be good. And Johnny Depp came out in it, but all throughout that movie, they just kept throwing out these random homosexual things, just for no apparent reason. There's one part I want to say they're interrogating this dude, or he's dead or something, and they put the balls in his face, and they're taking pictures, and they're humping on him. Yeah, and it's just like, okay, so what did that have to do with the whole plot of the movie?
It's a weird movie, brother. I
Yeah.
haven't seen that movie
Yeah,
yet.
if you can find it some other way other than paying money for it, I would recommend you do that instead of spending your money for it. I wasted my money on it, and I would recommend anyone else spending that money on it.
Yeah, so that's a subliminal message because what it's doing is it's making homosexual activities funny. And when something becomes funny, then you become more accepting of it. It opens you up to, not necessarily saying, okay, well, it's funny, I'm going to go try it. But the more over time you see those types of things, the more you're open. Okay, well,
Yeah.
you know.
And for original people in that movie, the token black kid or character was also homosexual, and then there were just weird random things that didn't fit there also too, where they would just show this black homosexual kid. It was some kind of gay innuendo joke, and you'd be like, well, what was the point of that? And you know, it's not that I'm anti-gay, or if it's funny, it's funny, but you know, it's kind of when you just do it out of the middle of nowhere. You know, we were having a discussion about politics, and you're like, hey, random gay joke, and you're like, well, where did that come from? Right? It was one of those kind of things.
Yeah, that's funny because that ties right into this movie Killing Them Softly that I watched a couple months back. You know, it's a movie with Brad Pitt. It's kind of like a, you know, gangster crime type of film, but there's very, very little original people in the movie. There's one black woman who's actually a prostitute.
Wow, what a great role.
And then there's a black man in it who's not in it, but he's in it. So, for example, there's a scene, and this blew my mind. There's a scene where Brad Pitt gets out of his car. He's walking into a bar. And in the background, you don't even really see, it's kind of blurry, but you can tell it's a black man. And you hear him yelling, "This is my block, blah, 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 blah. You know, I run this, blah, blah, blah," right? And then you see Brad Pitt walking into the bar, and you hear pop, 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 pop. And dude gets killed. Has nothing to do with the movie at all.
Wow.
You know
right.
what I mean?
What was that about?
Right.
What's the point
He
of
was
that?
not a character in the movie.
Just dies for no
Just
reason.
randomly has that in the background.
Yes,
you know?
it's like they're saying, so again, another subliminal message, right? That black life isn't so important. You can just kill a black dude randomly for no reason. Who cares?
So instead of seeing a bumper sticker do random acts of kindness, you do random acts of violence, right?
Yeah.
That's the depiction.
Yeah.
And we see that quite frequently in a lot of films. I know the war stories and the war films are really good about depicting the treatment of original people as enemies and terrorists. Because remember, we keep reminding you as our listeners, you being students and teachers yourselves, of some of the things we're talking about on this show. But don't forget that every time you watch a movie and it's depicting someone who may be from Iraq or Iran, we all consider them our people. You know, they're original people. So what did everyone take from the films in the 90s, such as True Lies and The Siege? Like, how was that a negative depiction of our people during that time?
Well, to me, it's like all it was really doing is softening, you know, the public's perspective up as it relates to war with certain individuals. So, you know, it was always, you always see like movies like True Lies, the enemy was, you know, of like Iraqi descent, or he was from the Middle East. You know, various movies you can go across the board in the 90s, even some to some extent today. You know, was it Zero Dark 30 or whatever movie just came out?
Yeah,
to me, it's, you know, you're showing a certain type of enemy, and the more our public sees that enemy, it's easy for them when they see the news and they show a picture of that individual, they could see them as, you know, individual who would do these types of crimes.
Cowboys and Indians.
Right.
So depict Indians being bad people, savage,
right,
poor, you know, Westerners who they just want to have their land and their house, which they stole, and live in peace amongst people that they stole things from. Poor them, right? Whereas, you know, the reality of that story is y'all stole stuff. So I went to this museum in the San Fernando Valley. It's a small spot. They're not completely set up, but they had a lot of history about the San Fernando Valley. And one of the main things you see when you first walk in, they have this picture on the wall of two dudes standing by his, you know, old school wooden house, and he's got a shotgun over his hand, or over his shoulder. And I was building with my son and daughter about the picture and the location, and the guy walked over, and I kind of pointed at the gun, and he was like, "Yeah, they better have a gun to defend, you know, the things that they stole from those people." Yeah, and it was a Caucasian man telling me this. I kind of looked at him like, yeah, you know, he should have a gun. 'Cause if you steal some things from people, you better expect that someone's gonna
come back for it.
Yeah, try to get it back. But you know, just that depiction, right? So then when you look at Indians and them being shot up by white people in movies, you kind of, when you look at it in history, you're like, well, of course they were doing that because look at what the Indians were doing to those poor settlers. And so, like you said, it's that subliminal message or that
imagery.
Right.
Yeah, it softens you up.
Exactly. And allows those kind of things to be acceptable.
Yeah, similar to like now, the movie just came out, Captain Phillips, where the enemy in the movie is Somalian pirates or whatnot.
Right.
Oh.
So I could, foresee them going into Somalia sometime
again,
soon.
right? Because didn't Clinton go into Somalia?
Right. So,
Black Hawk Down.
Right.
So what we're saying is that the films, at least that come out in the United States, and we might get even deeper and watch foreign films, but for the most part, they always set the stage for something which is going to be done later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's a movie about a certain virus, several years later, or maybe sooner than that, you're going to see some new virus on the scene. So it's almost as if
Contagion.
Right, Contagion.
You didn't see it? Did you see it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, they talk about I think it's a pig flu. And this
pig flu.
Yeah, this pig flu comes out, and there's nothing that they can do to, kill the flu or whatnot. Or they're in search of trying a way to basically kill that virus. But this movie comes out prior to maybe a couple weeks prior to flu season or right around flu season. So quite naturally, you watching that movie. Even me, I watched it. I was kind of feeling like a little squirmy in the movie, right? So I'm sure flu shots shot through the roof after that. After people left that movie.
Right. Yeah, definitely using the movie to incite a certain kind of fear. Like, okay, well, maybe people will. I forgot the exact quote, but basically our brains work in a way that they want to connect things naturally. Right. So if you watch a movie about people getting sick and not having something, and then you walk out to go buy something at the Rite Aid or Walgreens, Walmart, and they say, "Hey, we have free flu shots, or save $5 in your groceries,
right.
and
20% off."
And get a flu shot." You're gonna be like, "Oh, well, yeah, I should. I just watched this movie where everyone was dying. It only makes sense that I would get a shot that would save me."
Yeah.
And there you go. You end up getting sick and
Provocative, man. I mean, and there are some other issues if you really look at the subliminal messages in movies, and just look at it from a perspective as I'm trying to see what this movie is trying to teach me beyond the visible theme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And plot. I think one of the things that we pointed out is that if the hero is black in a movie, he or she tends to only bring about peace through violence. So a really good example that we agreed upon was Eli, starring Denzel Washington. So when you look at that movie objectively, or whatever word you want to use to describe how you're going to view a movie, we have this person who is carrying what we consider a dead book, which teaches about a mystery god, and he's killing, and this is the irony of the whole thing, he's killing and defending himself from people who are trying to kill him to get this book. And the end result of this is, of course, he dies, he becomes a sacrificial lamb, and I guess, the future of mankind is redeemed. But at the same time, I think the challenge for me, was the fact that, okay, so why is it that in order for him to accomplish his mission, he had to go about and be a savage and kill people? Of course, some people will say, well, it was self-defense, but however, the way everything was written, why can't a hero just be depicted in a different way when he's an original man?
Right.
So,
and then if it was a Caucasian hero, would he have died in the end of the movie?
Right, and that's what we were building. We were building about that when we put the show together. How many movies has Denzel died in? Most consider Denzel to be, I guess our top black male actor, right?
Yeah.
So You know, you got your
Dude's
Malcolm
always dying.
X. Yeah, I think he died in
Training Day.
Yeah, Training Day. Devil in a Blue Dress, I think, or Red Dress, whatever that movie is. I want to say he was killed in that.
John Q. Is that the name
John
of that
Q. Man on Fire. You know what I mean? So.
They're always killing off.
Exactly. How many movies did Brad Pitt die in? You know, like.
I don't remember.
Can't think of a dead Brad Pitt
right,
or Johnny Depp.
Really?
Or Tom Hanks.
Well, Tom Hanks' Road to Perdition. But again, he wasn't.
Okay.
But wait a minute.
Okay.
He wasn't a hero in that movie. He was a mobster.
Right. Didn't he die in the One War movie there?
Saving Private Ryan?
I think he died in that one. But I mean, I think it's just a vast, you know...
Unbalanced,
yeah.
Yeah, when you consider a person's body of work where you've died two times over a 25, 30-year career, it's a little bit different. Because, you know, Tom Hanks has been on TV since Bosom Buddies. You know what I'm saying? So that's been years, man.
Wow.
He's been on TV since the 80s, brother. So we talking about what? We're talking about 30 years later.
Right. You die like once every 15 years or something.
Indeed, man. So consider that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
What do we find with Inception? What's up? Oh, you want to add on?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I know we was also building about some of the things that we see in cartoons as far as subliminal messages.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and bring it.
You know, the first thing that kind of jumped in my mind was Lion King with sex. Yeah, in the sky.
Little Mermaid.
Yeah, they got the phallic symbols on the
cover of the movie or whatnot.
Yeah.
Within the castle or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because you see definitely in that generation of kids growing up and the kids that they produce, because a lot of those people ended up having kids kind of young. They were very highly sexualized, right? And you know, you see it in cartoons, you see it, you know, subliminally, just kind of overtly, right? Watching even Nickelodeon with my daughter and seeing these little girls that are definitely more enjoyable, I guess, to my son's age, but are trying to be depicted as older women,
right?
You know, and so you know you have that weird kind of subliminal message too. Like, what are they trying to tell you as far as an older person watching these TV shows, and then what are they trying to tell, you know, young men? Like, okay, you should be chasing a certain kind of woman who, you know. Yeah, so I just think those kind of things are interesting. So it's definitely in cartoons too.
True indeed. So, do you want to go into a discussion of Inception? I have to step out of this one because I haven't seen it. If I've seen it, I probably didn't pay too much attention to it. But what's the science with subliminal messages in Inception?
Well, Inception was a movie where, you know, they basically would look at, say, a leader's subconscious mind, and they would try to get into their subconscious mind and implant a certain message so that, you know, they would be able to control their action. So if I'm a leader and I'm going to make a decision that, you know, could hinge on something dealing with my country, I'm going to try to get to his subconscious mind, implant a message so that he'll make a decision that's in favor of me, you know. So what was interesting about this is that I came across a study where they were able to take or make or to develop an image from the brain waves of a person. So they could take an MRI of that person and use a computer program and take just from the brain waves alone video of their mind or of what they're of what's not necessarily everything yet, but they're obviously working towards that. But say, for example, if they had them watch a video, they could take the waves of the brain activity and project that same video on a separate machine. So I think this, you know, they're not necessarily at the inception level quite yet, but it seems if based on this that they're working, they're getting very close. Yeah. Now the picture wasn't 100% clear, but it's clear enough for you to see that it's an actual video of another video.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so to be able to take that, you know, take that from just brainwaves alone is kind of scary in a sense, because at some point they're going to be able to read our minds.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So that takes us into a discussion about the Minority Report. So, I mean, when I viewed Minority Report, I was just like, wow, I think they're already on the verge of that.
Yeah.
But here's a little bit more detail about how the police or law enforcement can predict a crime before it happens, but more importantly, how you can set it up to where a person can be accused of a crime if you have the right technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think one of the earliest television shows that really showed that going on in law enforcement, it was the original Mission Impossibles, where you had the team of spies. They would go in, and one of the first things they would do if they wanted to take over a role in a country and get a job done is, of course, they would put the leader to sleep, and then one of the spies would disguise themselves as that particular leader and play this role, and then get in and get out, and justice was served, and the free world could continue in the United States. So how does everyone see Minority Report?
Oh man, I think Minority Report is interesting, like you said, on a bunch of different levels. For those who don't know, Obama has a kill list that he puts together. Part of how they determine who comes up on this list is a loose term or a loose kind of way of Minority Report, where they take someone's actions over a count of days and they say, okay, well, terrorists generally act like this. And so if someone fits this description, they're ready to go as far as being a terrorist. And so in Minority Report, you have things like a guy's thinking, oh man, like what was it, like his wife was cheating or something, and he was gonna stab the dude or shoot him or something, and he's like, well, I didn't even do anything yet, right? So it's kind of like in the same instance where you're considered a terrorist just because you fit these simple things, going to the grocery store, going to the different places in this community. Minority Report kind of shows you that same kind of technology. They're like, okay, well, you've got these certain kind of patterns, dot waves. You could potentially do this based on what you're thinking.
Yeah, and they actually have cameras, or I want to say that they've already been using, that can basically, kind of detect based on your body language if you're about to commit some sort of crime and things of that nature. And that kind of ties into, for example, those the Mercedes?
Yeah.
The Mercedes cars who have the ability to detect if you're in distress and pull your car over if need be. So if I'm driving and my heart rate goes up for whatever reason, the car will take control and pull me over.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've also heard about. It probably was revealed on this show by one of you two. I just can't recall, but I know there are certain vehicles out there that it's designed to only be compatible with the contours of your hand. So, for example, if you want to start your car, if you're not the person whose hands were fitted for that particular vehicle, the car will not start.
Wow.
There's a lot of that technology out there.
a new iPhone with the thumbprint.
The NSA phone, you mean?
NSA phone?
Right. They have that. Even at my gym that I work at, and this was something that kind of raised an eyebrow for me. There was like, when you would go into the gym to get in, before you would either bring your little card and they'd scan it, or your ID. And then they switched over to thumbprint. So now you go to the gym and you just put your thumb on the little scanner, scans it, and then you get in that way. So to me, now they have all these thumbprints in a database.
Right.
Right. And now like we spoke about, I think on a different show, they can, if they arrest you, they can take DNA swabs of you without you being guilty of any crime.
That's true.
So based on what you were saying, as it relates to them being able to, place your DNA on a crime scene, it's a lot easier now because they have all these, they have your thumbprints, they have your DNA in this database. So,
modern technology. Why don't we end this segment with a brief discussion about Elysium, Solo, and Terminator. So how do these three movies sort of predict the future that we are in now, which is really strange because now for us is knowledge culture. Right. So we understand that there is, even though the past is important, the now is what we're dealing with, so that's even more crucially important because how we deal with things now is going to affect our future. So I haven't seen Elysium and Solo. It's been many years, but I definitely have seen Terminator enough. Cable, movies, DVD. Terminator was all over the place, man. So,
Universal Studios.
What's the science behind Elysium? I know Universal Studios.
Yeah, I think Elysium was a movie came out, not too long ago, maybe 6 months ago or so, with Matt Damon. But what stood out to me the most was that
he's a white dude trying to be a Mexican dude.
Yeah, right. So you have really only I think planet Earth in the future. And you only really see brown seeds. You see a couple black seeds sprinkled in there, but very little. No white people on Earth, but they all left to another planet that is called Elysium.
Wait. So all the white people left the Mexican people or the brown seeds in Earth?
Yeah.
But I thought Mexicans were considered white. That's what the census says, right?
Oh well, it's one of those interchangeable terms.
He's the reason why I'm being soft on y'all today. You see, he's saying it.
Yeah. So
a couple. I'm telling y'all at least.
Right. A couple things struck me from that is that we know that they're striving to go to Mars and send people to Mars, and obviously they're not doing that just to hang out. They're actually planning to eventually probably see if they could live there, because they're destroying this planet. So that's something that we could foresee in the near future, as well as the soldiers who were doing the dirty work were robots. So we know and understand that pretty soon, if not already, they have what do you call them? Cyborg type of soldiers doing the legwork.
Yeah, no doubt. I think I might have talked about that as far as Britain having a drone plane that can take off by itself, find its own target, or fly to wherever it needs to go, find its own targets, eliminate those targets, and turn around and fly back without any input from a human other than giving it the clearance to take off.
Right. And that's some dangerous technology because if it falls into the wrong hands, it could be used for something completely different. So since it has already fallen into the wrong hands via government, what are the other wrong hands it could fall into? Right. So it's in the wrong hands as we speak.
So, which is interesting though because I can't remember the guy's name, but I want to say he's the father of robotics, and he said that no time should a robot be made to harm a human. It's like one of the basic laws of building a robot. They're obviously violating.
Well, that's always been the case. You think about Nikola Tesla as far as the ability to use wireless technology, and he wanted the larger public to be able to use it for free because it's something that's naturally in the atmosphere. Right. Whereas you have the people thinking, well, we could get rich off of this.
Right.
J.P. Morgans and.
How do you make money off of free?
Exactly.
Let's kill that idea.
Yeah.
On a side note, the Tesla, they bought a plant here in...
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So I know they're kind of expensive, y'all, but you want to talk about supporting American, go buy yourself a Tesla. They're made right here locally.
So what about Solo and Terminator? So there's this idea of
Tell me about Solo.
The super robot. I mean, Solo's that's a period piece, really old.
Okay.
When the guy told me about it, I was like, man, I remember that movie, but I ain't really paid too much attention to it.
Yeah.
So you want to break down Solo for
Well,
me?
I don't remember too much about it, but I just remember that, it was basically a soldier that when they were creating a soldier, they could take certain desirable traits and genetically
kind of
place
like
those in the soldier.
Universal Soldier.
Exactly.
With what's the
Dolph Lundgren and
dude who was
Van
just the
Damme.
splits,
Van Damme,
for no
yeah.
reason.
Right. So, based on the last show where, we built about, I think it was my current event as it relates to their ability to take certain desirable traits and genetically place those in utero.
Yeah, you did build about that.
Yeah. I mean, you could foresee them making certain individuals strong, intelligent, crafty as it relates to warfare and things of that nature.
Right.
But my thing is they probably won't really have to use that because they'll just have robots for that job.
Right. And I was going to say that would probably be the mix. When you look at things that the government writes about, the so-called Agenda 21, and how they want to fuse with robots to try to live forever. I could easily see them fusing. I mean, because you got to test that science, right? These people aren't just making things up as they go, right? These are things that they've been thinking about for years and years and years. So how would you test that? Well, let's just make a bunch of babies and then inject those babies with some robot parts and see what happens as they grow. Because we can just make babies like that.
And that's the whole thing. When you look at movies like The Terminator, the whole idea is what they're doing in the military is their goal is to make killing machines out of human beings. So why not really live up to that whole idea of making a killing machine? Right. A human being or a robot that's wired to carry out certain tasks and certain missions. Of course, again, much of this research and much of the research that we'll continue to do will be meant to reveal a lot of these things that kind of leaks out of science. But we encourage all of you to take a look at your science publications, your science links, and keep heavily watching what the government's developing. Those really tiny articles in the newspaper that talks about the advancement in genetics and things of that nature. Those are like clues for what's to come. So why don't we go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about how movies and cartoons affect the psyche. Peace. Good segment.
Sure.
Peace and welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jakil Najallah.
Peace, Jarulala.
And for this segment, we're going to talk about how movies and cartoons affect the psyche. So I think it's, it has to be said that anytime you're watching certain films that may be action-packed or they have, gory scenes, violent content, they affect your body, and not only that, your senses and how you view reality. Quite, I would just say, on a relatively large scale. Mm-hmm. However, you're not really informed about how that affects you until later on. So, in saying that, why don't we get into a discussion about scary movies? I mean, all of us watch them, and what's the harm in scary movies? I wanted to just kind of pass that to Drew. Like, what were some of the things just in your research that you found that was harmful with scary movies?
Well, it really talked about people with cardiovascular illnesses or heart disease are more likely to actually have a heart attack or stroke while watching these type of intense movies or scary movies. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's definitely one way based on the adrenaline. The adrenal glands producing the adrenaline and that having an effect on increased blood flow to the heart and those types of things.
Right.
So that's one.
Yeah, and I can totally see that because with the lighting, the sound, and that includes the music. They really kind of put you in the scene, right? And so,
is it me or do you feel like the sound in movies has been like intensified much more?
Yeah, for sure.
It's loud. I mean, it's loud as hell in the movie theater, man. Like I've been in movies where people have actually walked out of it to go tell the people, "Hey, man, can you turn it down? It's like really loud."
Right.
I think one of the things about horror films back in the day when Friday the 13th came out, they brought it out in 3D. You know what I mean? So everything you could see, everything you could see was coming right at you. When he shot the arrow into the girl's head, or
everyone was like,
it's like coming right at you. So, again, it triggers these maybe unwanted emotions, but more importantly, it triggers a chemical reaction in your body that's not really good.
Yeah, even to add on, as far as we're talking about the effects that television and movie has on your subconscious and putting you in that state, right? And so you think, how are these people responding to a flight or fight situation? Mm-hmm. And I can think of only one. Well, I think Freddy. Someone tried to fight back with Freddy too, but there was a Jason. I think it was in Manhattan or something, with a black dude on the rooftops. He was boxing back with him. Yeah, and then he initially. But outside of that. Everyone sees that fearful thing, that stimuli, right? And they all go, and turn around and try and run.
Right.
And then, they fall, and then they turn around and they look, and then they try to crawl, and then they look, and then they get stabbed, and you're like, oh no, right? And then you have everyone screaming, get up! Right? But that whole scene programs people on how to think in a frightful situation, right? So now you get people who, instead of apt to deal with a situation like that, turn and run, because that's kind of what
or also, I mean, to add on, I'm glad you mentioned that. It also creates this idea that death and killing and murder and mayhem is some form of entertainment. When I was driving here today, they had put out a report about an individual who may have been in a car with a female companion who hit a woman with his F1, what is it, F-140, F-150, and the woman was transported to the hospital and she died. This was shortly after she had put her child in the baby seat. But the idea that a person would hit someone, because I'm sorry, even if you hit a cat or a dog, you're gonna know it. But when you hit a human being, so what's going through that person's mind to where they didn't stop
Right.
and go back and see if they could help that person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think these types of movies can be harmful, especially by people who are shallow-minded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To take death and violence as like this fun and game thing.
Right.
You know,
Duh.
a real fight or a real shootout. You know, people are trying to crowd around it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like they crowd into a movie theater.
Right.
So
Right.
it creates this really interesting effect throughout the minds of people in any society.
Yeah, no, you're right. To where it's like, if there was a shooting in the club, everyone would run out of the club. Now there's a shooting in the club, people are trying to run into the club. Like, oh, who got shot? Let me see it. I'm going to put it on YouTube.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, guys.
Oh, no, I was just thinking of, one of the biggest things that, like, I've seen now is just the deception in movies and in television.
The movie or...
No, just how everyone is about deceiving another person.
Yeah.
So there's really no connection or really community anymore. So you have, the neighbor's wives creeping across the street, sleeping with the neighbor, husband, and like I think over time when that's the only thing you see, that's obviously going to cause an effect on certain people in reality. So.
Right, it creates a cultural norm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like American, what was that? American Pie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was comedic in its value, in terms of the boy exploring and experiencing his sexuality. But what effect did that have on the teenage male who watched that film? It was all
ruined
about
apple pies.
Right, exactly. And objectifying women, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, you're right in line with what I was building on. It's just, there's no, like, we know TV is programming, and that programming is not really giving people anything that's going to benefit the community.
Right.
It's not going to teach them to be more communal. It's not going to teach. It's not teaching them to be more connected with one another. But it's teaching the opposite. You got shows like Scandal, where it's people deceiving people, sneaking behind people's back, and and it's the president cheating on his wife with a black secretary.
Ooh.
And a lot of black women feed into it and think that she's powerful and this and that, but she's a side chick for the president.
Right.
White dude, right? So it's
Sally
like
Hemings.
Yeah. So, you know what I mean? It's like that imagery right there, it's like on one end, okay, she's a strong black woman, but on the other end, she's a side chick for, the most prominent person on the planet, right?
Right, and that has its own kind of connotations.
Right, and it says, okay, so this is how you make it up the ladder to success.
Right.
In corporate America.
So what if Pharrell say cheat on your man, Ma, that's how you got in his ass.
Right. There you go. I think, I'm happy that you built on that because it ties into the flow where we have this idea of distorted reality in movies and cartoons. So again, cartoons are drawn by human beings. And the way you can look, especially if you look at things like Japanese anime, I mean, in some circles, that's classified as adult content, because you have these really extreme depictions of women, and men, and there's all this sexuality going on, even in those that are not considered in R or rated R.
Yeah.
You still see these gross depictions, and when I mean gross, I mean just blatant and outright, depictions of women, with their areola showing underneath the shirt.
Right.
They're wearing things in the cartoon.
Huge breasts that bounce every time she turns or something.
The stiletto shoes,
right.
Which is the phallic symbol, the woman walking on the penis. I mean, you can make all types of connections.
Which I don't know. I know some women who can fight, but I don't know any woman bad enough to fight in some stilettos.
Right.
If you're one of those women, hit us up on the phone. I'd like to meet you in person.
Right. It's one of those things where, you see progressively, because I can remember being a youth And like when I was young, it was like the process started to you started to see more of these types of vivid depictions of things on television.
Yeah.
And progressively, you get to a state now where on regular television, you can see someone getting their head blown off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can see basically a sex scene that shows, ass.
Yeah.
You know, and
how about even cussing on television?
Cussing,
right?
right.
You used to not even hear cuss words.
Yeah.
Right. Now you hear.
Bart Simpson was the cutting edge cursor. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Damn. Right. So what do you all
Yeah,
think
no,
about?
that's right. Because I remember hearing that and then
Yeah.
saying that, and my mom like almost wanted to knock my head off, like the Jason movie. And I was like, "No, wait a minute! I heard it on The Simpsons."
Right. Right. Yeah, no. And the other day, my black woman's nephew said "damn," right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Your mom let you say that?" He's like, "Yeah. Why?" And I was like, wow. Okay, so we're in a different world. I remember I would have got slapped up real quick.
So what do you all think has led to this increase in not only sex or sexuality and violence and aggression in cartoons and movies? Like, what has led to that?
Well, I think it really just, they feel like that's what sells. Before it was more about the art, so they would have to make something of high quality to sell. And now they realize, well, we could just have TNA and sell movies that way, like that movie Piranha or whatever, right? Piranha 3D,
Or
right?
Shark Tornado, Sharknado.
Yeah, but my thing is like, how did that movie get a sequel?
Right.
As whack as that movie was, it gets a sequel based on the TNA.
Too.
You know what I mean? It's the TNA, so
yeah.
they realize that.
I mean, I didn't really catch you, but if you look at horror movies, TNA has always kind of been the seller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the blonde chick who runs across, and all of a sudden it's raining, or she falls and her shirt's kind of exposed, and so you see her breast. You know, we gotta keep it real. But
so it's like they know that will sell, but before it was like, okay, well, we can have that element in it, but we want to make sure that we have a good product.
Yeah.
Now it's just push that. Even when you watch trailers, there's always a little sex scene or a sex element in the trailer. Whereas the movie might not even have a whole lot of it in it. They just have that in there. Violence, explosions, and sex are always in the trailers.
Right, and you have to ask yourself, can a movie still be considered really good? Will it sell well at the box office if it doesn't have those elements? And the answer, we can just say it. The answer is usually no, because unless it's like a family movie during the holidays or cartoons, a lot of the positive movies tend not to do too well, at least for a long period of time. So that kind of gives us an idea about the mentality that exists among people in the society we live in. How does depression relate to the whole scene? I mean, what would be some movies that, when we watch them, get you a little depressed? I know Menace to Society. As much as that movie is celebrated, that movie
you're like, yo, don't stop and scratch the ticket.
Yeah, man,
right?
that got me depressed, man.
Yeah.
I mean, because it presented this, and no disrespect to the Hughes brothers, because they depict our reality in the neighborhoods, but just to let you know, they've made other movies which had nothing to do with the hood. But in any case, I think with that movie, it kind of depicted that the black male had very little hope. That he is or he will end up dead.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm sure that was only one of several messages that came out of that movie. But, for some people, if you're a young black male watching that and you're living around that type of violence that was depicted in the film, depression, because depression is not always you're crying and, depression is, wow, look at the world I live in and, well, I have to accept it and that's what I'm going to do to get out of it, For young males, I think that has a really strong effect on their mentality about how they should live in a violent environment. Yeah. So, how does depression factor into the films that some of us have watched over the last few years?
Oh man, I tell you, a big part of it is I would argue that you could say there's a large amount of people in America who are probably depressed. Um, and a lot of that, like we were putting earlier, is just kind of food, right? Chemical imbalance. So if you were to give these people the proper nutrients and right food, that fix a lot of it off the bat. But
low iron and a lack of sunlight are two major, easy
fixes off the bat.
Yeah.
But you've got what is it? Misery loves company, right? And so people like to try to see themselves in movies. So when you kind of see someone who's going through something, you're more easily drawn into it. And I think a lot of times, if you don't see the good in that, then right, you leave yourself stuck in that misery. And so I think a lot of times it'll have an adverse effect on someone more than a positive effect, right? Because you're like, oh, well, I'm going through, unless you see a solution within that character in the movie that you can relate to, you're more likely to go to that depression and then just stay in it.
Yeah, I was actually reading, a study that they did that the people who would be considered clinically depressed, who watch tearjerkers or depressive type movies, actually have more of a reoccurrence of depression. So I think the majority of the people in this day and time have some inkling of depression in some capacity. So you watch these depressive type movies, news, music, that's going to keep you in that state. One movie that was probably one of the most depressive movies I've ever seen, which I should have known, but the Fruitvale Station movie. About Oscar, with Oscar Grant and how he was obviously murdered by the police. But damn, that's a hard one to watch. It's greatly acted, and just you gotta see it though. You definitely gotta see it. You know what I mean? Because it didn't show him as like your, I guess, everyday black dude in this perspective of like a savage per se. He was a good dad. He was just trying to find his way. Like every young black kid, 20-year-old or something, they're trying to find their way.
Yeah.
And he just got caught in that position, man. And it's harsh, man. It's harsh. But it's a great movie though.
Gotta check that out, God. So I guess at this point we want to go into the read, view, and do.
Yeah.
Ready for that? Okay. I'll give it over to Drew to do the read.
Okay, there's a cool book. It's a fiction book, but definitely a great read. It's 1984 by George Orwell. So it basically talks about, I think it was written in the 50s, right? It basically just talks about how government, if we allow it to get too powerful, it's going to become something that really controls our everyday activities. And, there's various things within this book that were predicted.
I was going to say, maybe he was a time traveler.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe he was not related to Nostradamus. Something like that. But no, he really, broke down what we can see in this day and time. So, yeah.
Good choice. And what are we going to view?
For the view, we got we want you guys to YouTube the Censored 11 cartoons. And that's consisting of some Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies.
Must see there.
Definitely.
And to do, I think you should just read between the lines of movies, man. I mean, one thing that was pointed out to me was the Nutty Professor, how there's a lot of funny antics going on in the background. So if you have a chance, look past the main characters in the forefront of the screen and just kind of, see what they're doing. Also, there's a funny scene in Braveheart, starring Mel Gibson, where there's a war scene where he's running with a rock, and then the next moment it kind of switches, and then he's not running with the rock, and then it switches again, and then he's running with the rock. So those are it's an editing issue, but it kind of taught me, because it was pointed out to me that it's really important that we look at the background. And I'll just tell you, I was trying to watch The Rescuers. It was an old 1970 Disney film.
Yeah.
And it said that there's a scene of a topless woman there in one part of that cartoon, allegedly. So I'm just kind of looking at that particular cartoon to see where people who say the topless woman is there. Because I do my own research. When you look at stuff on the internet, you got to do your research into it, man. I mean, especially if it's just some offshoot sort of thing. Anyone else have anything they wanted to share with the people?
I did. I think it's important, especially for me, getting knowledge of self initially. There was a lot of things that I, initially felt like I should stray away from. But I came to realize that I could do everything that I used to do, but just have a different perspective. So now that I have knowledge of self, I can look at the same movies that I used to watch, but look at it differently.
Yeah.
Now I can, get the deeper meaning, and also I could see what they're trying to project into my mind now.
Mm-hmm.
What imagery are they trying to show? Are they trying to show that black males are inferior or black women? It's like I can detect that stuff now.
Yeah.
So I think when you take that an open approach, meaning a conscious approach to watching television and watching movies, and you'll be more apt to get a deeper message from it, and then you won't be so subjective as far as what gets put on your subconscious. Yeah.
Indeed. Anything else, Jakir? Good.
Nah, see you guys next week, huh?
Peace.
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 Good show, guys.